Someone's going to walk away a champion. Someone's going to get one of these.
Someone is going to be the king of London. There hasn't been a king in London in a while, I don't think.
No, not since, 1950s?
No.
Old Liz has been involved for a little while now.
But one of these guys is 100% going to be the king, so they're going to win. So 8 players here at the London Masters. They're doing they're some of the best players in the country.
And by extension, the world.
Yeah, by extension, the world.
We'll allow it. Let's head down to our area and see who the players that we got are. It's time to do the big transitionary whooshy thing. Here we go.
Oh, there we go. And there was a sheep. Thank you so much for letting that transition be a sheep now. That's cheered me up loads.
Because we've got Donal Taylor at the top of our screen. He's on Gloomspite Gitz, and we decided to spare you the amount of time it's going to take these guys to deploy the hundreds of models that are on the table. Green skins on both sides here. And it looks like here, Donal... It looks like he's still in deployment. I'm pretty sure he's not. I'm pretty sure that this is actually that a hand of Gork's gone on, and he's getting to move all of his guys.
Yeah.
So that all of a sudden the cunning Rukk suddenly doesn't look quite so cunning.
Well, so let's talk about the list real quick. Matchup. So you got Ben Savva. I'm a big fan of Ben Savva. Just big fan. I like his involvement in the community. I like what he brings to the game. He's just dressed sharp today. We asked him why he dressed sharp. He's like, because it's the London Masters. Like, he understands sometimes the weight and the prestige of events, which really makes me. Donal doesn't care. Which even as the organizer.
Yeah, even as the organizer, he's just like, I'm going to be comfortable and I'm going to beat you that way.
But it's brought a fantastic packed lunch, which is key.
Yes.
But Ben's brought the Kunnin Rukk, so he's which is an army he used to run, and I think the first army he ever played. So that's what he's brought, and that's what you're seeing at the bottom. So the Kunnin Rukk, if you're not aware, does loads of shooting. It's got the ability to shoot in both the hero phase and the normal shooting phase. So shoot twice. It can do. Check this out, from 30 Archer boys, it can do 90 shots. So that's 3 shots each.
Just crazy.
But because of spells and command abilities, where you can have them, if everything goes well, is they can be, and because we're playing in the Realm of Light, but we'll add that on, but normally they could be hitting on 4s, potentially re-rolling, and every 5 to hit is an exploding, which means it generates an extra shot, attack, on a 5+. Now, because of the way the command ability works, he can do that more than once. He's starting off with 4 command points. Well, starting off with 3. In his turn, he'll gain his 4th one. So he could potentially have it so that every 5 he rolls to hit generates 4 more dice to hit. And then because that lasts for both shooting phases, that's 2 turns worth of shooting. It's
terrifying.
The mass is bonkers.
Like, there's a very real chance that at some point we're going to have a lovely time talking away to the small wee hours while these guys simply, and by these guys I mean mainly Ben, rolled a truly absurd number of dice. Now, in the meantime, we're getting to talk a lot while Hand of Gork goes off, because this is the way that the Gloomspite Gitz can get some serious mobility and board control. We're playing Places of Power. There's 3 objectives, and right now Donal has managed to put his 1 unit of 60 grots to cover all 3 of them. I mean, he's not actually claiming them with these. You need to get your heroes in place to do that. But he's going to make it that much harder for Ben to get any characters onto those objectives. But also it means that now, in terms of running forward and doing lots of shooting, the running forward bit of that equation gets a little bit trickier.
So we talked about this off air, and one of the things that Rukk players don't really want to do, realistically, is what they don't want to do is shoot in their hero phase, because they can shoot twice. Now that means that they can also move twice. They can either shoot twice or move twice. They can also fight twice, but they never decide to do that. So what they really like to do is have stuff really close to shoot, so they can shoot and shoot again. What would be really ideal, really, in this situation for Ben, would be to have that unit there and then some other characters on the objectives, because he's going to be able to clear those out. But what you're looking at is super interesting, really. So Donal's got a Gitz force. He's got some units of stabbers. He's got a Boingrot bounder, 10 Boingrot bounders. He's obviously got the Loom boss on the Mangler's squigs as well. Ben Savva got to choose who goes first, and he's given the turn to Donal. Donal's then run forward, and because of the scenario we're playing, which is the poker chips you can see represented, which is 3 places of power. It's all about heroes. Heroes score the objectives, and only heroes can take them off. So there's lots of minuses to hit that can come out of the Gloomspite Gitz book that can reduce the damage, the shooting done from those 2 units of 30 arrow boys. But it's really interesting, because I don't think necessarily when you're talking about this as a matchup, the shots can be reduced enough.
No, I mean, it's even even if you're giving things -1, even -2 to hit, there are enough pluses to hit somewhere in this list also, and the sheer volume of shots means that this big unit that's being moved forward right now with the hand could get deleted relatively quickly, only to then potentially come back around the shrine that's in the back, albeit at half strength later on.
Yes, it could be. It could be really, really big. But I just think that there's enough. Also, and this is something to always remember. Some people don't remember this, but stabbers with their moon shields, which is quite cool. They get +1. They get +1 save against shooting.
Yeah.
Which not a lot of people remember, unless you just happen to say it just that second.
Yeah, no, I didn't say that second. You know, you got it.
Good.
We're all good. But yeah, it is one of those things that sort of gradually these bigger units of Gitz do get to stack up all sorts of bonuses. Notable that if you happen to have Gitz that are shooting, they don't really get very many bonuses, which is part of the reason that you only really see stabbers at the moment in a lot of the Gloomspite lists.
Yeah. Well, they're just maths better all day long. So I think that's realistically.
Yeah.
Plus, no one wants to have to play, unfortunately, a lot like the post players. Well, when we do get to the rolling phase, I think that's what we should call it now.
Yes.
The rolling phase.
Which might happen twice per turn.
Yes. So Geminids has been cast now, and this, in my opinion, if I'm honest with you, Tim. So if you've just joined us, this is me, Rob, and this is Tim.
Yo.
We're here at Magic Madhouse. In my opinion, Geminids, you start every armor list as you see by now with Geminids.
Love them.
And then you start writing the rest of your list, whatever that might be.
Yeah, because I mean, it's just stopping your opponent from being able to do the basics of what they want to do on a really consistent basis, forcing them to at least think about having a little bit of magic in there just to get rid of them at some point. I mean, right now he's put a big old roadblock right in the middle of what Ben Savva's going to want to be doing, and there's 3 endless spells in Donal Taylor's list. He's got a lot of different ways of making kill zones on the board, I guess, because he's got the Geminids.
Yep.
He's got Mork's Mighty Mushroom.
Now that is probably going to be one of the most impactful spells in the game if it goes off. Absolutely. And
he's also got the Scuttletide, and the Scuttletide effectively having sort of infinite range because it comes out of
a terrain
feature, and again it represents a piece of blocking terrain that is going to make life a little bit fiddly.
Yeah, he couldn't potentially shut them down, but like we talked about in the last game, the power of shooting is that movement's less impactful. I mean, it's important, don't get me wrong, and those 18-inch bows aren't big. Now, so those 18-inch bows aren't necessarily, they're not going to cover the whole board, so he's going to want to move and give himself some options. But I think, it's super interesting, really. Because obviously what Donal's done in his first turn is he's moved that giant unit of stabbers forward, but they're more than likely going to die, which he knows, and they're going to be able to regenerate out of the Loon Shrine at the back. So that's quite useful, but it's all about the characters, so he's got to try and focus on getting at Ben's characters. Now Ben's running, he's got 3 weird boys. No, weird boys. They are called, what are they called? Weird Knobs.
Yes.
Yeah, main out Weird Knobs. He's got 2 of those on boards and then 1 of them on foot. And he's got the Savage Big Boss. The Savage Big Boss, if anyone's ever played against Bone Splitters, is your key target. He is, because he's the guy that gives the command ability, which gives exploding attacks. He's the guy that allows you to make an extra move or an extra set of shooting in the hero phase. So he's the key. It would be really cool to find out where on the tabletop he is exactly. There we go.
So, yeah, Gemini's getting off, obviously very important. Potentially some other big spells early doors. I mean, of course, we see that the hand happening. That one was a roll of a 13, thanks to a little bit of help from the fact that Scragrot gets his pluses to cast, meaning that there was no chance that Ben Savva could stop that one.
No.
Though I'm sure he would have liked to.
So the heroes that Donal's got, Scragrot, and we should come back to him in a bit and just talk about his raw power. You're a big fan, right?
Super big fan. It's something that he does something in almost every phase of the game that's going to be relevant.
Yeah, exactly. So he is a big deal. Shooting phase could be really key as well, depending on what he shoots, especially if he shoots that big boss and gets a wound off.
Yeah, just whittle him down, moon on a stick.
There's a ticking clock now on that. And then, so that's really important. He's got 2 Madcap. He's got a Madcap and he's got a Fungoid Shaman. And then he also has, as you can see on the top left-hand corner there, a Loon Boss on Mangler Squigs.
Yeah, the Loon Boss and Mangler Squigs, very big imposing figure, beautiful figure to put together and paint, but it's one of those things that I've seen a lot of lists that are running lots of Mangler Squigs. They're very powerful.
I think we're seeing, oh no, Oh, that was a big deal. I think that was the mushroom we just saw not cast, which I think is really, really big in the game. And we probably should talk about why. So mushroom not going off. I think that's what we just saw there.
Yeah.
That deletes hordes. So that every model within 8 inches of that, and that from any units, can take a mortal wound on a 5+.
5+, yeah.
5+.
Now, worth noting that all of these Savage Orcs have 2 wounds apiece, which is miserable in terms of trying to take them off with traditional anti-horde things. But you got to start somewhere.
It's actually quite useful for the spell, because it means that a lot of those models are going to stay there. So you're still getting, if you clear a third of a horde with 1 wound, then you get to roll less dice next time. This is actually quite useful, because the second time round, I think maybe the maths doesn't work out there, or does the maths work?
The maths is still worse. If they've got 2 wounds, it's still not quite as good, but it's still powerful stuff. Really, really good. But not cast in this situation, which is... Okay. Not cast in this situation. Oh, that's It's
good.
all right, I'll sort that out.
Okay. And therefore not having an impact. We'll see what that does in the next turn. But I'm pretty certain Donal will want that to go off in the first time, because he wants to reduce that shooting that's coming in. Yeah,
it's also just then another one of those pieces that just sits there, makes people's lives miserable by occupying space that you suddenly don't want to occupy. I mean, in the case of something like Places of Power, if you sit that down on one of those objectives, that's like, it's not like you've tagged it, it's more like you're saying, best of luck tagging that objective, because now whoever you send there, they're just going to have to deal with the fact that they're going to have these wounds ticking up. And on a character, yes, they've got lots of wounds, but if you're essentially dealing some of those wounds essentially for free, then it's just not a very exciting proposition.
No. And I think Donal would have really wanted that to go off. What's really interesting is he rolled Hand of Gork first.
Yeah.
It's interesting the priority that he decided to go through. Hand of Gork, Geminids, then the mushroom.
Yeah, I mean, some of that might be kind of trying to bait Ben, maybe if he's got limited dispels in terms of where he wants to be using them.
Yeah.
I think that Ben's got enough weird knobs in his list that he can pretty much 1-for-1 try and stop most of the things coming from the other side of the table.
So in total the casting value for Donal's army is 4 against Ben's 3. What's important also is let's just double check. So I'm pretty certain Zarbag is in Donal's list as well.
No, he's not got Zarbag. He's got a Madcap, a Fungoid, and Scragrot in terms of his.
Okay. So it's still 4. It's still 4 as a casting value versus Ben's 3 unbinds. But the Madcap can once a game cast another spell as well. So potentially 5v3 one time.
Yeah, I think the Madcap and the Fungoid can. It's just that when the Madcap does it, sometimes he ends up taking a whole bunch of mortal wounds for the
he should.
trouble.
He's eating a big mushroom and poisoning himself, right? Or no. So everyone in the Twitch chat and everyone who's watching, if you're watching back on YouTube, leave some comments below. But I'm rooting in this situation for the Uruks. And you're not, Tim.
Yeah, I'm all about the Gitz. This is the army that I'm playing at the moment. Donal's a regular at the club, and he's been mentoring me under his Loonking auspices.
Has he been saying Boingrot Bounders to you a lot?
He has, but it's interesting, like the trajectory that Boingrot Bounders have gone on, right? Because when they first came out, we're like, wow, these represent a ton of wounds, and they do. They're great. But the thing that maybe, like when you're reading through the war scrolls on them initially, that isn't super obvious, but ends up being pretty relevant, is they've got really low bravery. Like you end up, I mean, yes, you have a lot of command points, so you can start spending command points on the bravery for your Boingrots, but if you're doing that, something else is going to suffer.
Yeah.
And it's something that initially when we were looking at it, we're like, wow, these seem a bit underpointed. Now I feel like they're a good piece of the puzzle, but I'm not willing to bet the farm on them. And to be honest, what I like a lot about Donal's list right now, it's got so many Grots with Stabbers. He's got 120 in this list in total, a 60, a 40, and a 20, and that means that he's got great board control, and then he's got endless spells that back that up. So the Mushroom, the Scuttle Tide, and the Geminids all help with creating awkward zones on the board that are difficult to deal with. And then he also has the Mangler, which kind of does the big damage, the Boingrots that do the big explosive damage. And I think he's also got a few Fanatics in there as well.
Yeah. I think his plan early doors is to not super commit units. And now, obviously, the Loon boss on Mangler Squigs on the far left-hand side, which is now holding that objective, I think that's his mission there. I think what he's going to try and do is a bit of a classic swamping, I call this. So this is where you basically ping your opponent into their deployment, and he should be able to do this almost for 3 turns, as long as Ben doesn't get the priority roll. So what he'll be able to do is take the unit of Grots he currently has, and he would be able to charge in. I don't know if he's going to, but he could. And then he can follow up with his other 2 units, wave after wave, and just pin them in. So it means that they can only shoot. Now, what's unfortunate for Donal is, and I'm sure he knows this ahead of time, that tactic probably is not that sound, because what Ben can do is shoot a unit and then shoot the next unit, because just the sheer volume of shots coming out. Does mean, though, that they're not moving, and most importantly, the characters aren't moving onto the objectives, which is what you need to score the point. So I think Donal's basically going to try and make it till turn 3. On the right-hand side, underneath the Ophidian archway, I'm pretty certain there's a character hiding.
Yep.
And trying to be out of line of sight as much as possible, which is useful if you're a Git. They're small.
Super easy to hide in that scenery.
I mean, if you're playing Bone Splitters, you probably want to be as tiny as possible, right?
I would say so. So this is our shooting phase from Donal. This one is not quite as complicated, because it's just the moon on a stick, coming from Scragger at the Loonking. And it is a pretty decent shooting attack. You get 6 shots with it, and you get to potentially tag a whole bunch of pieces with mortals.
Yeah, you do, and then the mortal wound shooting is also really impactful, and that's why we've just heard on table 2. We're talking about some smells from the Drake Seer. So what it does, it casts 7, does a mortal wound, then you roll a 4 up, and it does 2 mortal wounds. Another 4 up, 3 mortal wounds.
That can add up really fast.
It can, especially as Jack just did 36 mortal wounds with Flames of the Phoenix on table 2.
I mean, when someone's rolling like that, they're not losing a whole lot.
That's game over on table 2. That's the end of the game.
Crikey. Now, it must be said that our table on camera did start a little bit after the other tables, so that's not quite as much of a rout as it first sounds, but it's still kind of pretty much a rout.
Yes. The Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, which was kind of his key piece to stop all of Jack's shooting, because he has a 3-up save, re-rolling 1s, ignoring rend. So that really puts a pay to the. Jack's got to be over the moon. He's just diced him off.
Yeah,
it's just a dice situation.
Just do it.
Yeah.
Now on the battlefield here, we've got Fanatics have come out of that unit of 60 Grots. So just down the sort of left-hand end of that unit, you see 5 Fanatics coming out. So they'll be able to work their way, hopefully, into the Kunnin Rukk on this first turn. You get the Hand of Mork, which gets you close, gets you within 9 inches of your opponent. Bring out your Fanatics. So suddenly they've just got a 6-inch charge to do on the first turn, which is very achievable.
Yeah.
Some of these Gitz lists are running 10 Fanatics for the big Fanatic bomb. 5 can still do a lot of damage, though. It's D6 attacks on each of those guys, and then doing a lot of damage.
Yeah, no, they can do the work. I did say when we did the review, I was like, oh, that's not fair. Games Workshop did not think that through. You can't teleport a unit and then pop a unit out. They weren't really thinking that combination through. But now, if you had cogs up, that would just be one of the easiest charges in the world. One
of the easiest charges you could hope to get, and that's certainly something that if you're going to plan for that way of doing things, then yeah, it works very well. Now, something that you can do against Fanatics, though, is because you can potentially stand your units close enough to your opponents that if they don't get them out early, Fanatics can go and get stuck without places to come out of units occasionally, which is there are a few more ways around it. You can't now run with your unit and then get your Fanatics out and charge. So they've monkeyed around quite a bit with the way that Fanatics work with the new edition of Gloomspite Gitz, meaning that you just have to use them a bit differently.
Yeah, you do. There are still loads of tactics. So this is what I would describe as an offensive deployment. But there's, if you see where the objective is and the Loon boss is just behind it, that would be that's what's called a defensive deployment. So effectively, what you could have done is left them off the board. Then, if Ben charged, which he won't, but if he did, what you would be able to do is you would still be able to bring them out. Behind, but within 3 inches, so they could pile an attack, which a lot of people don't really see as a stratagem.
So Brutal Beast has been stopped with a 10 on the Dispel from Donal.
So we're into Bone Splitters turn 1.
This is Bone Splitters turn 1, and because of that Dispel, it means that the Kunnin Rukk is somewhat less cunning than it would really want to be.
Yes, it is. I mean, it's still going to shoot fairly well, but Brutal Beast is the +1 to hit.
Yeah.
So that means that they would be hitting on 4s, and then they would do exploding attacks. What I imagine you're not going to see from Ben now is you're not going to see him spend all his command points on having exploding dice on 6s. So what that means is, when I say exploding, that's an attack that generates another attack. And then at that point, every instance in Age of Sigmar, it stops. So it generates the next set of attacks. So that's probably so he probably won't spend those command points now, which is a little bit inefficient. But that's fine. I think that's fine.
There's still time.
I think he might dispel Geminids, because no matter what happens in the next turn, Geminids is not going to go back.
No.
And hit. It's only going to affect him again. So the sensible play, I think, is to remove Geminids. But while we just see what happens there, a question from JPick in the chat.
Yeah, so just asking what London Masters is. The London Masters, basically, throughout the course of the year, through the various tournaments that happen, we got rankings on the different players, and of all of the players in London, this is the top 8 ranked players, and this is essentially the playoff to determine who is the London Master. So it's a small tournament, but a very high caliber tournament in terms of the quality of players, to ultimately get someone the inaugural London Masters shield. They'll win themselves a hammer that they can take home, and then we've got a shield set up that will have, ultimately in the next 10 years, 10 names put onto it. Nice. So we can determine the legacy of who the greatest London players are.
Do you think you're going to expand it next year to a larger amount of people?
Quite possibly, yeah. We've got the space to, and I think it would be fun to do so. It's the sort of thing that it may well be that it's part of it's figuring out, should we have more tournaments that let people qualify? Like, we can certainly run a tournament that's got 16 players here, say, for example, and there's obviously various other places around London that are running tournaments, and still have the elite final day to get to one winner, or maybe just have a bigger tournament itself that's the London Masters. That's something probably for the Loonking to figure out, because Donal Taylor, the Gloomspite Gitz Loonking, who's on camera right now, is also the TO for this event. So he's the one who is trying to lead from the front, I guess, in charge of this, as we see Ben pulling out bags and bags of dice.
So shooting.
Yeah, we're now in the dice rolling phase of the game.
Yeah, so it's still the hero phase. So he's gonna. So because of the Kunnin Rukk, you're able to either move or shoot or fight, but we'll always leave that off the table in the hero phase, because it is called the War Scroll Battalion ability. There we go. I got all the words, and that is why he's able to do that. So he's going to be able to do that with his units in the Kunnin Rukk, one unit. And that usually is the unit that gets all of the buffs put onto it. So you can do crazy amounts of shots. As you can see, I'm pretty certain the command points weren't updated, so I don't think he did. I don't think what he did was use those for exploding attacks. So I think he's just trying to dice off some grots and see what they do, and leave a space, realistically.
Yeah, the big D20, the big green D20 on the sort of the left of our table. We've asked Ben if he can keep track of his command points on there, just so we can get a sense of exactly how many command points he has to work with, because they're such a valuable resource to him. Bizarrely, for the Gitz, they get so many command points, it's like candy, they can use them for everything.
But they almost have nothing to spend them on.
Yeah, like essentially, like Donal might well use them just to be like, I'm going to guarantee a variety of runs, because I can.
Yeah, and a really good point by 65 does not understand you in the chat. I'm just going to use 65, says in the chat. Yes, Aether Quartz Brooch is on his general, not his general, one of his characters, and what that does is he can regenerate and recycle command points on a dice roll of a 5. So those exploding attacks, Tim, can actually, he said 4 before, but it could be 8.
Which would be terrifying.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's already terrifying. At some point you go, once you've got enough shots to be able to delete whatever unit you're shooting, the extras are almost a waste. So the scary thing in some respects for Donal here, given that Ben's not used them now, whichever turn he does choose to use all of those command points will be gigantic.
Yeah, but another thing, because we're playing in the Realm of Light, so as you can see at the top of the overlay, we're playing Places of Power as the scenario, if you want to follow along at home. We're playing in Heesh. Now, one of the there's a Realmscaping effect and one of the spells from the Realm chosen. Now, the spell from the Realm is you can pick an enemy unit within 18 inches and get +1 to hit, which is crazy good for a Bone Splitter's force. And then also the other one is if you're inside cover, you get your -1 to be hit, which is a big deal as well.
Yeah.
And Ben has tried to cast the spell, the Realm spell with +1 to hit, which would have made up for the fact that he didn't get the other one off, and didn't go off. Did not go off.
And the tough thing for him is, as well, this is the best turn for him in terms of being able to successfully cast spells, because from turn 2 onwards, that's when the moon comes out.
Yes.
And right now you can see the moon's the very top left-hand side of the board. It's going to gradually work its way across the board, potentially stopped at some point by Scragrot. And once Scragrot's under the moon, instead of the regular amount of bonuses he has to dispelling and casting, he has even more bonuses and can potentially make it so that actually firing off spells is going to be tough for a large proportion of the game for Ben and his Cunning Rukk.
Yes, so because of Geminids, as you guys can see there, on the right-hand side, that unit is hitting on 6s when the ideal... So what you had, potentially, in this army, is you had a Cunning Rukk. The best you can get is 90 shots, hitting on... In this situation, because of everything all told, they would be hitting on 3s, re-rolling everything if a spell goes off on a double, but more than likely re-rolling 1s, generating extra shots 4 times, and then Faith of Watch goes off 8 times, yeah, generating extra hits on 4s, and then shooting that twice.
Ewa woowa. It's Edward Woodward without the D's, but it's also what happens when everything works out.
That would be the extreme end, but now what we've got is 6s to hit, re-rolling 1s from only 90 shots.
Yes, which is still pretty scary. But it's in the grand scheme of things, like Donal has to be happy with how this game's going thus far.
Yes, absolutely, because it's 10 hits versus whatever we said before could have been insane hits.
So that's 11 hits in total that Ben has been able to achieve with his shooting.
Yeah, which the other way around would just be crazy. Some of the chat's asking, what's the idea with the long lines of units stretching away from the main lines? So effectively what that's doing is connecting to characters for either Inspiring Presence or other buffs that he may want. So there's a character at the top left-hand side, you can see there. Just being able to be near those characters and then choosing where he wants to remove models is the purpose.
Yeah, and because we're at one of the newer books, there's a little bit more in terms of having to be...
You said we. I like that a lot.
We as a collective watching the game.
You as in me and all the other Gloomspite players. You're so involved.
Also true. But no, because it's a newer book, it means that there's a little bit more wholly within rather than just within in this book. You know, we're not looking at a Daughters of Cain situation right now. So there's a little bit more that you need to think about for some of the buffs of making sure that you're super duper close. I mean, right now there's Snuffler Squigs up top that they need things to be wholly within, I believe, to be able to grant extra attacks. Right now up top they're just chilling out, and there's a good chance they're going to chill out for much of the rest of the game. I'm not quite sure if they've granted any extra attacks to anything in this first turn. It may be that, for example, that Loonboss on Mangler Squigs had the potential to do something big here.
Yeah, so we're now into the movement phase. The shooting you saw before was in the hero phase, so it was the Rukk shooting. So you're going to see shooting twice, absolutely. So yeah, movement phase with these guys, and then more shooting is the plan. But because of the scenario, and this is what's key, almost all of the armies are expendable, and they're just dancing around dealing with those characters. Now, the Loon boss on Mangler Squigs, he can't get far away from that objective. Because if he moves off it, he'll stop scoring that round.
Yeah, this is not a scenario where you can just tag objectives and ignore them.
No, so it's going to be really important. And then, but what if you see at the top left-hand corner, there's a shaman, and I think he might do the replace. He might do the switch. Realistically,
now I might need to update my scores here. Is it that Donal has scored 1 point?
Scored the 1 point.
All right. Well, let's make sure that point's actually on the board. I'll just update that really briefly.
Yeah, he scored the 1 point. So look, points on the board is always good. There are 42 grots left in that central unit currently.
I think that thus far...
Great updating, by the way.
We did it. We got there.
I'm proud of you.
It's low tech, but it works.
No, it's not low tech though, man. This is cool. I think this is awesome. I'm chuffed. Wicked. Yeah. So movement and so look, there's not really much strategy to get too excited about. Right?
Yeah.
He's moving forward and shooting. The strategy is what they're doing is they're dancing around all of the units around the characters. Yeah.
So in principle, in a scenario like Places of Power, if people are looking for ways of being able to deal with this in the future if they're playing, is it a reasonable plan to just say, I'm just going to go after characters? If I can kill off characters, then everything else is kind of secondary? Or is there a little bit more to it than that?
Sorry, you're going to have to repeat that. I was just getting the information from the table.
If I'm playing Places of Power, can I afford to just go, I'm going all after characters the whole time? Can I just be laser focused on dealing with characters because that way they can't score? Or do I kind of have to pay my dues a little bit to all of these other units?
No, because this is what's really awesome about scenario play, right? And why I think Age of Sigmar is so good. Realistically, all you've got to do is jump on those objectives and score a few points. All of the characters could die in this turn. Let's just say a hand of a Cornate God came and smoked the table and murdered everyone. The win goes to Donal because he's got that singular point. That's all that matters. So focusing on the characters is the only real thing that's important, but also defending your characters is that key. So it's a give and take of your armies to just position the characters where they need to be. So yeah, like the focus has to be on moving them into the places they need, while also protecting them. It's a double down.
And one of the cool things as well about scenarios like this is it really does force you to build a list that doesn't go a little bit light on characters. Tempting as it might be to spend 600 points on Boingrot Bounders, you need to get enough characters in there that even if Scragrot gets killed off, and I think that Scragrot right now is hiding in that forest sort of front and centre at the top of our screen, but yeah, if Scragrot gets killed off or that Mangler Squig gets in trouble, having the extra Shamans in the list so that you still have a few more things to get those objectives is really important. And that's for a tournament where you're building versatility into your list so you can play all the different scenarios. You definitely don't want to get in a spot where all your characters can be easily sniped and you just lose something like this.
No, you don't. You could, yeah, you're absolutely right. And then what's really key here, if you look at the Loon boss on Mangler Squigs, his job is to go murder.
Yes.
So he can't just be stood around doing nothing. Otherwise, you're just wasting. I mean, winning the game is never wasting points.
True.
But if you're looking for him, you want to commit with his points into damage as often as much as possible with the right trades. So it's a bit like the old Nagash syndrome in this scenario. He can stand there and he's got good range potential, so he can do some shooting. But Vampire Lords and Zombie Dragons, when they're stood on that objective, they're like, I hope you come near here, otherwise they're not really as much of a threat. And in that situation, maybe you do actually deal with the rest of the army, and then you just sit there with your characters, knowing that they have to sit there like some sort of crazy guard dog, an undead guard dog that's a zombie.
One of the things that's been talked a lot about by Gitz players in terms of that character balance is whether or not actually there's space somewhere in the list for a Troggoth Hag, who is really good at standing on objectives because she's got that regeneration. She's really, really difficult to kill and has -1 buffs that you can throw around. Almost a concession to the fact that, yeah, even if she works out being a little bit slower than some of the other heroes that you can move around, like one of the better characters in the game to stand on an objective and say, come at me.
I think she's the Troggoth Queen. Has been a long loved princess of the Gloomspite community, and I think she definitely is going to go into many army lists. It's like you said, the regeneration is just absolutely huge. Talking about the game, so one of the key features that we've seen during the hero phase, because we've just done the movement phase realistically and then we're moving into the shooting phase, is in the very centre of the screen you can see two white circles. That's the Geminids of Ulguish, and they haven't been dispelled. And our table reporter is saying that Donal has fed some info back, and he thinks that's a mistake. I would agree. I did say that.
It's your favourite piece in Age of Sigmar right now, essentially.
It just is, and because he hasn't dispelled it, which means even if Ben wins the priority roll, he's now -1 to hit.
And those -1s add up like crazy when you're rolling that number of dice.
Absolutely, like it's a.
It means that he's exploding less as well.
Yeah, So, like in his army, he's got the potential to add +2 to hit, but now he's only ever going to get the bonus of a +1 to hit. And just dispelling that would have been really impactful, and he's decided not to. I don't know why, but he's decided not to, which I think is key. And then we're into the shooting phase now, so we'll see what he does there. And see what units he decides to prioritise. See if he goes for the Loon boss on Mangler Squigs.
Yeah, I mean, the Loonboss on Magnus Woods has a really interesting damage table compared to essentially anything else in the game. It's very, very scary when it's at full health, can do a huge amount of damage, can move a long way, can pretty much do it all. But then, yes, it loses a lot of potency as it takes some wounds, but then it gains a whole bunch of potency when it gets close together again. It's as if it has like its second wind and gets kind of angry.
I like that though. Like, he just gets the most furious it can be.
And then when he finally dies, he essentially kind of explodes.
Yeah, he does. I also wonder if he's going to shoot the Fanatics off, because that's a good decision.
Shooting off Fanatics is a tried and honoured system. It's interesting to me. I don't know whether or not Donal brought them out and then just didn't make the roll on his charge. That would be the most likely scenario.
Well, I mean, I don't think he's going to charge the Gitz. I don't think that's the decision he's going to make with the... Although he may, like we saw in the last game with the Dwarves, he may just make the charge because he wants the range.
Yeah.
Realistically, because he can clear in his hero phase and he can clear in his shooting phase. So you may see he just decides, do you know what, I'm doing it, this is life.
There are 2 units of 10 Savage Orcs with Chompers in the list.
But they're at the back of the board, as you can see, snaked around on the far left-hand side and on the far right-hand side.
Now, what's the role of those in the game going to be? They essentially just sort of back up?
Nothing, I would say. I don't think...
Cheerleaders.
I think maybe he was protecting like a flank charge, but I don't think that they don't really have a purpose. Because but he could have thrown them in. But what he didn't want them to do was be, if you look at that deployment, he stuck everything on the front line, at the front. So he wanted the unimpeded movement. So they had to kind of go behind or be somewhere. He's not. No effect is what I would say. In other games, hold objectives. This game, they don't have a role.
Fanatics off the board already. Didn't get to do anything there. Just got shot.
Yes, I'm rooting for this because I'm rooting. I'm emotionally invested in the Bone Splitters.
Yeah, I mean the Fanatics. If they'd got into combat, they just like the fact that they fight essentially at the start of the phase, not even before everything else. You get to get a bunch of activations in first, and they can just delete units. So little win there for Ben getting them off the board. So much shooting that he can be working with though. A lot potentially still to do.
Yeah, loads to do, but it's going to come down to that priority roll. And like we said, the setup really for the priority roll here is really in Donal's favour because of the Geminids, which is just why you put them in the list. We talked about it last game. It was a great conversation we had about the priority roll.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like, I'd like to play Warhammer, but I'm scared of the priority roll. I'm like, no problem. Just put Geminids in your army list. There you go. Now you're already mitigating its potential.
The other cool thing, and again, I'm talking very much from a Gitz perspective here, that's kind of cool when it comes to worries about first turn. 'Cause that's another thing that, especially if you're a Warhammer 40k player, first turn is terrifying because whoever gets it can do so much damage that you're like, oh, it could go horribly wrong. That Gitz can threaten doing good things going first or second. So if they're going first, they can do more or less what we've seen Donal do here. He gets his unit out front early, he gets his Fanatics out. Yes, we missed the charge there from the Fanatics, but that's a scary prospect. If you go second, Mork's Mighty Mushroom is in some respects even better because you get to get 2 activations on it before your opponent gets to move away from it.
Yes, it's so good. Like the Comet from Stormcast,
yes.
Right? Yeah, like those spells are going to be super impactful. And again, you know, when you start having this real cool conversation with yourself when you get into Age of Sigmar at a certain level. At a certain stage, you go, actually, I'd like to be in charge of who goes first. So then you start building, like Ben's list, a 1-drop army. Mm-hmm. So as you alternately deploy, that's a drop, and then whatever your cumulative total is, that's your drop amount. 1 drops are the best you can do, which means most of the time you can control who goes first and who goes second. What's really, once you get to that stage, you go, right, I'm deciding. You go, oh, I'll give you the first turn. And therefore I maybe get the double turn. So that's how you start to build your army list. Then there's a stage after that in your learning process where you go, well, I'd like to take Gloomspite Gitz, and you can build a 1-drop army in there, but you're probably paying so much tax in inefficient units that you don't want to. And so you go, okay, well, I'm like an 11-drop. So now I need to put stuff in my list if my opponent gives me the first turn.
Yep.
And some books have that capacity, which is just really lovely. So in my opinion, you kind of go through this, I don't know what I want to do about the first turn. I want to have a 1-drop. And then eventually you go, I don't care whether I go first or second. I have the flexibility inside my army to decide. That's the kind of process I think you go through.
And once you've decided that you can make a list that's got that flexibility, you might as well have 11, 12, however many units you want in there, because you're already playing to not really care about that stage of the game.
Yeah, and then you're getting into dead drops. You'd be like, I'm deploying intentionally and obfuscating my intent, so you don't know what's happening.
Yeah,
it's really exciting.
If the first thing that you throw down is a relatively harmless-looking shaman or unit of squigs or whatever it might be, your small unit of 20 goblins first, because you're not that bothered about them, then you're giving nothing away. Your opponent puts their first piece down, and especially if that's a battalion, you might be like, all right, well, I pretty much know your entire deployment, now I get to play my game.
Yeah, exactly. But big game-changing stuff on the table. We've gone into the charge phase. On the right-hand side, there's a character on a kind of longer base. That is a weird non-maniac on top of a boar. He's made the charge, and he's got within range to cap that objective. Now, he's done it in the charge phase, which I'm not... it does say you have to move onto the objective. I think the charge counts as a move and therefore scores.
Yep.
Realistically.
Yeah, because you can pile into it. So if you can pile in, then you must be able to charge in, right?
Yeah. There's some hot gossip from the table. I think both players have been absolutely okay with it. But Donal's been using a 9-inch ruler, but accidentally has had the tip, the inch tip taken off it.
Oops. Oopsie poopsie, just as well you're the one that wrote the pack, eh?
Yeah, that's a classic Gitz move, though. But I like both players. So we just heard from the tabletop, both players were just chuckling about it because they were both using it at the same time, so it's not stress. Yeah, it's all good and gravy. But the big charge getting in there, now what's really interesting about using area denial, so that big unit of grots, the 40 guys, they're spread out, you're closing down the movement potential. Positive.
Yes.
However, means you're susceptible to having things like that happen, where a character that big unit, if it was in a block, could kill that character.
Yep.
Now they just don't have the output potential to clear that.
Now, for future turns, at least there's the fact that so this is the unit of 60 grots up front. They've taken a few hits, but it was 60 to begin with. The unit of 40 grots just behind.
Is that the priority roll? It's a 4 for Donal. Sorry, I don't want to cut you off. It's a 5 for Ben.
Uh-oh. Danger, Will Robinson.
That could be massive. That's a big deal. Oh my God. So yeah, pretty certain that dice roll has gone, unless that was something else, but...
It's not that... There are not that many contested rolls that you see.
No. Oh, no, I don't think it was. No,
it can't have been.
No, don't worry.
Still had our fight.
Don't worry. Oh, calm myself down. I've got too excited. Every time we do dice, is that a priority roll? Can we...
Yeah. We need almost them to, Maybe what we should have. Here's what we need.
Yeah.
We'll have this for next round, and I think we might have this just for future. We will get some big, scary-looking dice that we give to our players, and like every time you want to do a priority roll, this is the only time that you use these dice, and then we know.
Yeah. We know
that they're doing the big, scary roll.
Tim, are you telling me you're going to make giant squig dice?
Maybe not squig dice, but yes, some just obviously big, imposing, easy to read on camera dice that just get used specifically for the priority roll.
Well, I'm going to be disappointed now if it's not a giant squig dice. I'm not going to lie to you.
Well,
I built it up to myself already. You should promise me nothing, because I will just go too far.
Promise you nothing, and then you get everything you ever wanted.
Right, so I think, by the way, that charge to get the win of Shaman, Maniac, onto that objective was an 11.
Oof.
And cogs, which you can see in the centre of the board there, and that is being used by another Shaman to slow down time. So he did not get that 11 with cogs speeding up time.
Which is normally what I would expect from these lists.
You normally would, yeah, because again, really clever use inside this older book by Ben. The +2 movement means that if you cast, the Bone Splitters move 5.
Yep.
And then if you cast the spell that increases their movement, that doubles it to 10. But now that increases it to 14 because they've had +2 move to it, so they can move 28 in a turn.
It doesn't seem fair. How is this possible?
Well, currently they're not. They didn't move very far at all.
It's a little Sunday afternoon stroll for the Kunnin Rukk.
Barely a movement. So the grots are piling in now. In close combat, the Arrow boys will do very little, even though they're orcs. They're very, very serious about firing their arrows.
I can respect that.
And I imagine they're quite tired having shot 1 bajillion shots.
Yeah, I mean, thing is that when they're fighting in close combat, they are fighting with arrows. And where do they find all those arrows? That's important. They need them for shooting with.
Yeah. They probably use their half-broke arrows, like maybe the feathery end. And their grots as well. They don't really respect them. They probably just tickle them a bit and give them a kick in the face. An orc has never respected a grot ever.
Well, maybe by the end of this is the matchup.
This is a bit of a cultural war. I won't lie. This is a
civil war.
Yeah, this is a civil war. This is a racial, cultural war in the Mortal Realms between 2 destruction factions.
I mean, worth noting, Destruction, the most represented faction in this London Age of Sigmar Masters.
Absolutely, yeah. In fact, there are no. Are there any chaos?
There is.
No.
Yeah, there's
no. No, there is Matt. Matt is the one chaos player.
Yeah.
So the Burgle Beasts.
Yes.
That's not wrong. Burgle Beasts.
Burgle Beasts.
So these grots aren't going to do as much damage as they could do normally.
No.
And that wasn't their purpose in the first place. What a unit that started off as 60 is down to 34 now. So they've not even lost half over the course of that.
But yeah, it's one of those things that, like, this is why you play Gitz. You get these giant units that, with the best will in the world, can take a real...
I thought it was Manglers. I thought that was the reason to take them.
I mean, from a hobby goal standpoint, yes, Manglers are beautiful models, and they do a lot of damage. But the real workers are in the battle line when it comes to your goblins.
Yeah, they're in the Stabber Boys.
Yeah, love them. Yeah. I mean, yes, it's nice that you can potentially get some units of squigs as super cheap battle line if you want to go for the different build. But yeah, literally, when I decided I wanted to play Gloomspite Gitz, the first thing I did, I bought 100 grots and I painted them.
I've heard you've just finished this project, am I right?
100 grots finished. I'm still working on some of the rest of it, but I've broken the back of that army now, and the rest of it, comparatively speaking, will be a breeze.
Oh, lovely. That's one model. I've got to paint one Mangler. It sounds so much more different to 100 models.
Yeah, even though in practice, in terms of hours,
probably the same.
Similar.
It's nice doing centerpieces as well.
All right, so we're moving along here. The moon has moved into the top left quadrant. That little orange piece that you see there, that's the moon. It's going to gradually move across the board, and the moon does quite a lot of things on this board. So it can...
Oh, here we go. This is the priority roll. Oh, Ben's rolled a 6. Oh, that's so tense. Oh.
I mean, if he went second, so on rolling a 6, he couldn't be beaten, right?
No, he could. If Donal,
for the double, yes. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, got it. Yeah. So Ben has won the dice roll, but that means Donal's going to get to move. Well, no, he hasn't decided yet. What he's doing is a classic. Well, he's meditating because he does that for 5 minutes between every round. He likes to just realign his chakras and just make sure.
He's a Zen player in many respects.
Yeah, he's got his pink rock salt crystal to the side, just giving off the. And I'm right in thinking when he walked in, he initially moved a couple of tables around.
Yeah, the feng shui was important to Ben, and so we made sure that it's not just positioning on the table, it's positioning of the table that's important to him.
And I'm right in thinking the first thing we did when Donal walked in was we patted him down and made sure he had no extra items on him or dice or some cards up his sleeves or anything like that. Oh yeah,
like you got the full shakedown.
Yeah, Archean, hi brother. Archean, me and Archean have been talking to each other via the internet for like 3 years now.
Excellent.
He's a babe.
At some point, the meeting will happen.
Yeah, he'll say something rude though, so just watch out. So Ben's deciding whether or not to have the turn or give the turn, and I'm pretty certain he's going to decide to have the turn because that's the right decision. But this is where Geminids comes to affect him in a big way. The reason I think he's going to take the turn is I think that he's going to want to score twice. I'll double check with our table report, but I'm almost certain he scored the right objective, so he'll have scored a point, and then potentially can score another point there, so that could be a big deal. Plus just the shooting, he just wants to get rid of it, and why would he let Donal do the spells on him?
Yeah, I mean there's a lot of potent spells from the Gitz list. It's not, it's not going full Tzeentch or full Nagash or anything in terms of its amount of casting, but especially with these endless spells, there's a lot that can be done by Donal if he needs to.
Yeah, like we talked about, the mushroom not going off on the first turn has got to be. There's two things that could potentially. Hi, Hock and Pin, by the way. There are two things that could really impact the game, and that would be the mushroom going off on the first turn. Sorry, the mushroom going off, that was really big, and also not dispelling the Geminids, that was really big, and both of them has happened. There we go. So yeah, the Geminids have gone in and they have hit that unit of Arrow Boys on the right hand side, and done some and made them -1 to hit, and hasn't hit the other unit. So the other unit could be free to do. The other unit could be free to get all of its buffs stacked on, so you might see the shooting, but he's going to want that, and Donal's made the right decision because most of his valuable stuff's on the right hand flank, but then maybe the Loon Boss on the left hand side is bait. I can't really decide.
I mean, like, I love the Mangler Squig as bait because it's one of those pieces that it's really tough to ignore because it can do an awful lot, but it's not as if Donal's got a list that's built around that Mangler Squig that's really trying to use its command ability to buff some Boingrot Bounders in a substantial way or anything like that. The Boingrot Bounders that are in the middle there I don't think are in range of any buffing from that Mangler Squig, nor are they likely to get there. So it's more just a big scary character that's scoring points that is essentially issuing a challenge to Ben Savva.
Yeah, and he has to get rid of him.
Yeah.
Like he just has to. He just has to go and just be like, look, let's get rid of you. And he's going to really regret having not dispelled Geminids, I think.
So we've got a few objectives that are now being claimed by Ben. We'll just double check to make sure that he wasn't scoring any last turn. I don't think he was.
No. So we've had that. Thank you. We've had the poker chips updated.
Yep.
In what we're calling our POL, our poker objective. No, that's wrong.
We'll
SOP,
get there.
SOP, Stream Objective Poker System.
Yeah, we're getting there.
SOPs.
You just got to have a system.
The SOP system.
At some point, we might move to the light system. It's not going to be
We're going to
today.
send you a box. The Honest Wargamer is going to send you a box.
Oh, and we'll send you a lovely Valentine's card.
Oh, it's my first one. I can't wait. That's going to be lovely. So the cogs have been slowed in the hero phase. We haven't seen the hero phase shooting yet. So it's 2-1. Actually, to Ben. So
Okay.
Ben got another character, which is in the centre as well. So that's huge. It's a huge switch around.
Yeah, he got one of his weird knobs in there, I think. just snuck it in without you even noticing.
Don't. I'm trying really hard to be as professional as possible because you seem really professional and smart.
It was a cunning stunt from the cunning Rukk.
Not getting
He's a cunning mother Rucker.
No, Tim, I'm not playing your reindeer games. I'm just sticking to it myself.
Very well.
Yeah. Yeah, this isn't. Is this our nod to the LVO with the poker chips?
Yeah, absolutely. Thing is, gambling's legal in the whole of England all the time. It's not like you need to go to Nevada to make it happen.
No, yeah, it's just legal all the time, right? We'll gamble on anything. 50p.
What happens in the whole of the UK stays in the whole of UK. That's how Brexit happened, right?
Again, I'm not touching that one with a barge pole. It's all right. So Ben's in a really advantageous position here, but he has to be aware that the Boingrot Bounders can clear off his Shaman in the centre.
Yep.
The Gitz at the top right-hand corner can clear off his Shaman at the back. Now, he does have two other characters. He's got the Big Boss and he has another Shaman on foot to replace those, but he's got to clear... Oh no. Oh my god. So what you're seeing, you see the green left hand?
Yeah.
That is him spending command points and then generating them back with the Aether Quartz Brooch. I think he spent 5 command points. I'm going to double check that, but we will find out. But he spent a certain amount of command points, and then because he's got the Aether Quartz Brooch, he regenerates them on a 5. Now, what that means is there's a unit. There's a unit with +1 to hit because that spell's gone off. And now they are doing so. They're hitting on 4s and they're generating extra attacks on 5s to hit. They might be re-rolling 1s in a minute. They might be re-rolling everything in a minute. It depends on the spell. But what's really key is he may have spent 4 command points.
Now, how does this exactly stack up? Because I understand we have got a dice rolling app out, which suggests to me that there's some big shooting going on.
Yeah, it's just like, do you know what? This is just easier to do it this way.
I know there's sometimes dice rolling apps get a lot of heat, but you know what? Once you hit a point where you're having to roll more than 50 dice at the same time. I think that's the line for me. It just seems silly to not make the most of this technology. And this is an app made by Games Workshop as well. It's not sort of, oh, I've got this picture of some dice that does some things and might be shady or might not. Like, no.
Well, see, what's really clever by Games Workshop is what they've done is they've built 40k and Age of Sigmar, which is like, obviously there's these incredible model ranges and these books and everything.
Yeah.
And what they've actually done in a very clever move in the digital age is they've created the entire game system just to sell a 99p dice app. Now, most people would think that that's insane, but I know that. But internally, they told me, they're like,
it's the long game. there's no production. Once you've made it, each one of them's pure profit.
Imagine selling 1 billion dice apps. That's their plan. But so he's done +4 attacks, right? So he's done his command ability 4 times.
So if I roll a 5 on one of my shots,
it generates 4 more shots, which you then have to roll to hit with.
Yeah, but those shots, if I got a 5 on them, it doesn't go on into infinity. Because literally, I think at that point, we would find that...
Yeah, we would stop.
Mathematically, I think that it would actually just grow exponentially the number of dice you're rolling rather than reduce.
If that was to happen, I would walk over to the table myself, and as much as I love this beautiful place, I would set it on fire.
I mean, I think I would be allowed that to happen. Because it just... and then I'd walk to Nottingham and charge them the bill.
I like how you'd walk there.
Yeah, I wouldn't even get the... You're getting the train. I would walk there just in pure anger.
Using the dice app, so it was 18... Oh, so also 18 mortal wounds. No, just 18 wounds, sorry. Just 18 wounds before the 26 extra attacks from that single unit.
Crikey.
So it's 26 times 4 new attacks have been generated.
That's 104 more attacks.
Hitting on 4s.
So 52-ish hits.
Now, because it's the Kunnin Rukk, and where all of the stacking becomes crazy, this is what's happening in the hero phase. It's going to happen again in the shooting phase.
So we can reasonably expect that however many figures Donal might have on the board right now, he's going to have substantially fewer by the time he gets around to his next turn.
Yeah. Arkio in the chat's asking why they haven't stopped the stacking of that command ability. They forgot.
Yeah, I think it's almost as if they're putting out fires once they emerge when it comes to some of these command abilities, rather than doing a gigantic overhaul of everything.
Well, no, there were 2 processes they could have gone down. No command abilities can stack.
Yep.
Or we'll individually write each command ability as it comes up. And they went for option B.
I can see the merits of doing it this way, honestly, because it's the sort of thing that every now and again, a few things stacking up here and there is quite fun.
Like the War.
But
unless you're on the end of a War.
Yeah.
You ever been on the end of a seven War?
I have not.
It's not fun.
I think that Donal was one of the original guys that led to command abilities not being allowed to stack anymore when he first showed up right after AOS 2 came out.
And then Ben's teaching him a valuable lesson here. It's like, oh, nice, I like that you did that. Let's do this again. So, Donal is now just removing grots by the thrice-fold. Donal loses, but basically Donal lost 28 grots in total in the hero phase shooting, which is almost as much as he lost in the previous entire turn.
Yeah. Essentially, one unit effectively got buffed into being 5 or 6 units of shooting there.
It did.
It's crazy what happens. But the thing is that this is part of what we love about Age of Sigmar, is that crazy things happen.
They do, and almost hilariously. And again, what I love about this over abilities that happen automatically is the dice roll. Right, Ben built up his CP pool, and then he's taken the Aether Quartz Brooch on purpose. So even in his next turn, he's going to generate a CP pack. He's going to have 3, so he can still have it so that a unit can do 3 lots of attacks on 3 lots of attacks.
Yeah,
that's right.
One of the cool things, and it's something that a little bit of what I've seen Ben be very successful with, both with this army and with some of the other armies he plays, is that people look at dice rolling games and go, well, it's random because there's dice. And, you can't argue with that, but watch me try.
Yeah.
Because essentially, one way of getting around the randomness of dice is to roll an awful lot of dice, at which point you end up pretty much hitting your averages far more often. If I've got one attack that does d6 damage, I can't assume it's going to be 6 or it's going to be 1 or it's going to be 3.5 or anything in between, because at that point the randomness is a big deal. When I'm rolling 120 attacks, 360 attacks, whatever it might be, I will hit my average pretty consistently because that's how the maths works.
Yeah.
And that's something he's been doing very effectively for a while now in OS2.
Yeah, and I mean, the other way to go around it is just to have rerolls to just like compound and add to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big deal. And yeah, you're 100% right. And this army is the definition of weight of dice armies, which is really one of the things you really need to do to deal with hordes. So you've got Rend or mortal wounds that you need to deal with armor, and then you've got you need to deal with hordes, and weight of dice is really good as well for that. Mortal wounds is the best for all of it always, because they just ignore everything. Like you can't be ignoring mortal wounds. But then you've got some armies like Nurgle who can ignore that as well. So it's just all a bit.
Yeah, it's a big juggle of what you want to be able to beat. If you know exactly what your opponent's bringing, you can probably come up with a list that will be pretty good against it. But for a tournament, you won't know what everyone's bringing all the time, and you need to work your way through that and figure out what the important things are to beat, and ideally have something that can play a little bit against everything.
Yes, you do. So we're now into the actual movement phase. So actual movement, as you can see, there are only 5 grots left there. But that's the good thing about those 5 grots is they're the unit that have stopped the unit that's locked in combat with them, and the one that's shooting at them.
Yeah.
So they're only going to be able to shoot at them again. So they're going to want to clear. But what Ben can do is just shoot at his other unit into those 5 grots to clear them off. But I'm super interested into what he's going to shoot with his right-hand side unit again. Is he going to go for the Boingrot Bounders? Do you think?
I mean, I think that they have high potential to mess up what's going on with Ben Savva's turn, not because they're a high damage unit, though they are, but because they count as having fly. And that means that unless there's some very careful placement of figures by Ben, that a happy charge roll could potentially mean that those Boingrot Bounders can get past the lines and deal with characters, and ultimately, as you've noted earlier on, places of power, if you can deal with the characters, everything else kind of falls apart.
Yeah.
And that might be a way that Donal, in spite of having potentially lost a large proportion of his army to shooting, could still win this game out.
Yeah. And here, on the left-hand side there, and on the right-hand side, you're seeing something done which is a mistake I really made in the first turn. And also something you picked on quite nicely, and also I think Ben maybe made a bit of a mistake with, which is that unit on the right and the unit of left of Rukks. They could have just been running off in the first turn and been a little bit more threatening, like we saw Jack's Liberators in the last game. But because we didn't think that they'd be impactful, like he didn't move them and I didn't move them, but really they're serving no purpose. So having them run up like he is doing now on the right and left, they could potentially serve some purpose to hold a unit or do some movement. So that's like a mistake. I definitely was like, I wouldn't know what to do with them, just leave them. But actually, running them up was a better decision.
I mean, I guess one interesting point on that, looking at both these armies, for tournament play, one big part for both of them is going to be time management.
Yeah.
Like, rolling all those dice takes some time. Moving all those grots takes some time. So, if moving up a bunch of orcs is going to just add to the amount of time, but they're not really going to do very much, it might be smart to not move them. Like, it's like there's a lot of inflection points on all these decisions, and so yeah, it's going to be interesting to see whether or not it ends up mattering. In the meantime, though, the Kunnin Rukk in the middle is going to do some work.
That's his purpose, right? What's really nice actually about the Geminids as well is because they count as models on the board, and we talked about fly. What's really important is they're going to be able to hold. If you can use the Geminids, interestingly, to surround your character, who's the character in the very centre, and that creates a little bit of model blocking, a lot like your actual models that you intend to move are. So Donal's moved them there, looking for the debuffs, but Ben can potentially use those to help create a little bit of a defensive screen in his backfield, and then Donal may be forced to unbind them if he wants to try and get at that character, which I think is interesting.
So apparently, according to the information that we're getting from Andy that's giving us a bit of info from the table, Ben Savva simply forgot to dispel those Geminids.
He did forget, yeah.
It was just a pure... He was that focused on everything else he's doing, didn't get there. But the 5 grots were able to free up the Savage Orcs in the centre, so...
And what are they shooting at now? That's the question.
I mean... I'm tempted to just take another big unit of grots off the board now. Get the sort of the big units off, and then worry about the bounders later potentially.
Yeah.
The Boring Rock Branders are the ones just below.
Well, I think he's got almost too many options here. He needs to get rid of the on the left-hand side. He needs to get rid of because number one, it's a damage threat, which is key because he could lose quite a lot of shots realistically. And oh my God, one of the superstars of all ages Sigmar is here. Ming is in the house.
He likes it down here. Anytime he can make it down, he will come along, working on his trolls part of the Gloomspite Gitz army. One thing that's going to be relevant if he tries to shoot the Mangler Squigs is they have got the Griff Feather charm.
Yeah, they do.
So they're going to be at -1 to hit, and once the -1 to hits add up, that's where things can sometimes get a little bit fiddly for the shooting. So maybe that's going to be a factor. I don't know. I don't know if it's enough to stop you from trying, but
I think you're absolutely right. I think that's why it's there basically. Yeah. Especially with all the other minuses to hit. I think Donal could have chosen a bunch of artifacts, but with the sheer volume of minuses to hit that this army has, the battle line, or so the stabbers are -1 to hit because of the nets. Geminids is another source of -1 to hit. There's a -1 to hit spell. Like, it's just that's what they're orientated around. And what's a little bit disconcerting for Gitz players is unfortunately knowing that they're a debuff army, because that's never fun to play against.
Yeah.
But it is the power of this army. No one can put out the volume of minuses to hit that this army can.
Yeah, and I mean, this isn't even a list that is as optimised to do that as much as it potentially could be. I mean, we talked a little bit about whether or not the Hag Queen was going to show up in some Gitz lists. She's another one that throws out debuffs, and yeah, this is a list that makes it just difficult for other armies to operate at full efficiency.
Yes, which especially when it's so razor thin on that shooting coming out of the bone splitters. So if you guys have just joined us, or you joined us from anywhere else, this is table 1 it's an 8-man tournament located here in sunny London. Look at that, I can see sunshine.
Yeah, we got a nice little view out over East London here. We can see the Olympic Park out our window.
And we're at Magic Madhouse, located
Stratford, just sort of towards East London. Closest station to us is Pudding Mill Lane, but feel free to come on by, get some games in, get a pint while you do so.
You should say more hilarious London-based names, because international listeners would be like Pudding Hill Lane.
Pudding Mill Lane.
Oh, okay, all right. Are there any other good street names nearby?
Street names nearby, I mean, not especially. We're on Dace Road, which is a pretty boring road, really. Hackney Wick's the other one that's close.
Oh, yeah, good old Hackney Wick. I was there, had some food yesterday.
Yes, good.
In some place.
And the brewery for our beer is literally 5 minutes walk from here as well.
By the canal. Does it get? Is there a horse that brings the beer up?
So we're Truman's Beer, and Truman's Beer used to be the biggest brewery essentially in the world. Brick Lane in London only exists because of Truman's. They literally had to build one of the first streets with bricks in it because they were rolling so many barrels of beer up and down that road that otherwise it just wouldn't have worked.
I like that it's beer that caused the building of roads.
Yeah, for Romans, they need to get their armies from point A to point B to sort of control the land and whatnot. No, beer. That's what we're built on around here.
So while beer being near the centre of all beer, on this table you have Donal with the Gloomspite Gitz at the top, and you have Ben Savva with his Kunnin Rukk at the bottom. Both of these players won their first round, and then because of the way it worked with this team, these 4 games of 8 players, someone is going to win 3 games and then win the tournament. Table 2's already finished, where we saw Steve Curtis with Lisa Nagash versus Jack Armstrong with his mixed order shooting army. That's already over, and Jack's on 2 wins now. And then we've got the other games. We're not sure.
It looks like Matt Spergel are still playing against Simon, who's also on Cutting Rukk. A whole bunch of Destruction players here in this event. Yeah. And then Adam Kunnin was playing against the Daughters of Cain. When I walked across earlier on, that one looked like it was going very, very well for Order Draconis. Yep. A lot of damage dealt by those dragons early, taking a whole bunch off the board before it had too much impact. I would guess that Adam won that one, but it looks like it is now complete. We'll find out exactly how that one went from one of our update guys.
Yeah, and then Matt Hinton on table 3 with his Beasts of Chaos, which have got Nurgle these, so they're technically a Nurgle force against the Kunnin Rukk as well.
Worth noting that there's been a successful charge from the Orcs on the far left against that Mangler Squig, successfully getting the 12-inch charge. Obviously helped a little bit by just sort of getting the good rolls in spite of not getting the early move there.
Yes. So yeah, absolutely. And there's also the charge on the right. So what Ben's looking to do is he's not looking to fight the units. What he's looking to do is just lock them. He's looking to lock them into combat as comfortably as he can. And then reducing the damage in. He's not looking to do that on the left-hand side. He's looking to kill the Mangler Squig. The Mangler Squig, who, by the way, has taken 2 wounds from shooting, and that's it. So that's what I think he's looking to do. But the unit on the left-hand side isn't his Archer Boys. It's just his unit of
10 Savage Orcs.
Savage Uruks with chompers or choppers. Does it say chompers?
I've got chompers written down here, but that might just be a playful typo.
Yeah, I think that's a playful typo. Although he doesn't, he's got Plague Bearer bodies with Savage Uruk heads, which is a great conversion. Looks really nice.
Yeah, a really beautiful looking army. I mean, it's one of those things that sadly that's one of the things that our top-down camera, as high definition as it might be, can't really reflect. Is some of the paint jobs on these armies absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, really. Ben's is particularly lovely. Yeah, I'll agree with that. But we're in turn 2. Ben got the priority roll forward to turn 2. In turn 1, he had the option to take the first turn or give the first turn. He gave Donal the first turn. Donal handed Gork to unit over. He failed 2 of the key spells, really, which was Mork's Mighty Mushroom and the Scuttletide. But he did get Geminids off, and then Ben not dispelling Geminids has really impacted him this turn, and he's going to impact him in the next turn as well, because now Donal's got no reason to dispel it, and he's still in a really solid place.
One less thing to have to worry about casting. Next turn, of course, once we get into turn 3, that's where the moon will be covering the entire board, assuming that it doesn't move super fast.
Yeah.
And of course, Scragrot the Loonking, if needed, can stop the moon in the right place or force the moon to move different amounts so that the entire board could be covered in moonlight for this next turn.
Yes, which could be quite key for Donal. Again, if you guys are looking, we're playing Places of Power. You can see that in the top, and we're playing in Heesh. So the realm effects are, if you're in cover, you -1 to hit, and there's a spell, 18-inch range. You can put it on a unit and get +1 to hit. Massively advantageous for Ben, but still just as useful to the Grots. And we may see that cast. And there haven't been any deaths for the characters on either side yet. And the tough one to get rid of is that Loon Boss on Mangler Squigs.
I mean, the Loon Boss, it's got the Griff Feather Charm, so it's a -1 to hit anyway, just from whatever's coming at it, be that shooting or otherwise. And yeah, it's a big old body with a lot of wounds. It will be something that's a bit fiddlier for Ben to take off the battlefield than pretty much anything else. Though I guess that the small consolation is, if all it's doing is standing around on an objective, at least it's not killing all of those other pieces on the battlefield.
Yeah, but he needs to get it off the objective. He needs to get it off real quick. Big shout out to Leka Leka in the chat, who says, it is chompers. I appreciate that. I'm really happy your son has been able to teach you how to use a keyboard and a computer, you old man. But a big fan of Destruction. I imagine he wants the Gitz to win. That's my show host, Nathan. So there you go. He is old, though. So old. Like almost 1,000 years old. What Ben's done also on the right-hand side, which is quite key, because it was very risky on the priority roll, is his Shaman who made that big 11-inch charge to secure the right-hand objective. He's now been able to screen him off a lot from lots of the combat, which could potentially come in. But obviously the Boingrot Bounders, as you pointed out so adroitly, can fly, so maybe they can go get that charge off. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, they are, they're not chaos aligned, but they're definitely agents of chaos in terms of their predictability levels.
They could go anywhere they want at some point, yeah.
And under the moon as well, once they get to the point where they're fully under the moon, they get to run and charge and do all sorts of things. Their mobility goes up even further.
Yeah, on table 3, so the only other remaining game, which is Matt Hinton's Beast of Chaos versus the other Bone Splitters force. There's no real update. It's 0-0 in turn 3, so that's really interesting. And then the Orcs on the left-hand side, 4, and they miss. So the Loon Boss on Mangler Squigs is doing just absolutely fine.
And we're potentially going to get a chance to see some more from Jack Armstrong in our final game, because he was able to emerge victorious against the Armies of Death. good stuff from Jack. Hard to ever bet against him when it comes to pretty much any Age of Sigmar tournament you care to choose.
Yeah, little bit rusty in his first game, obviously.
Yeah.
He just got into it. Like he's had 4 weeks off with his twins.
Yeah.
So he hasn't been into it a while. So it's probably why we saw that tape measure not working quite as well as it should have. Hoping like we get that tightened up for the final game. That would be really exciting to see and see what the shooting can do against. Maybe we got shooting versus shooting.
Yeah. What happens then? Who wins that?
The big issue is the big boss who can get shot off. But I think
One drop list potentially gets to do all its best work before that even happens, though, right?
Yeah, you're right, and that's why that being the free city that allows you to have that +1 save is quite important. But I think if you can clear off, to be honest, if you can clear off the Arcanaut unit in one round, and if Jack gives him the potential to do that, then I reckon that's Ben's game. But that's if Ben's even going to do it. Gitz versus it. Ooh, that could be fun. I don't think that they have enough damage output.
I mean, I certainly do not mind watching some more Gitz on camera. This is all a big learning experience for me. I'm going to be playing some Gitz at Bobo later on in the year, so getting a chance to watch one of the better Gitz players around, the Loonking himself, here up against the Kunnin Rukk, it's a big old learning experience.
Are you excited about playing the
very much so.
The Bone Splitters in the future?
I'm not going to play with the Bone Splitters.
No, against them.
I'm excited to give it a go. Yeah,
I reckon you could.
Get a few games in.
I think the Mushroom, which you painted, and which is right next to us right now.
Yeah, it's just living in our little coverage booth.
In our booth. It is gorgeous, by the way. Congratulations.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Oh, is that not finished?
Yeah, I might do a little highlight on it.
Wow, that's fantastic. Good job. All right, so the combats and what do we think is going to activate? It doesn't really matter because Ben's not trying to fight anything apart from the Loon boss on the Mangler Squigs. That's not what his intent is. What he's trying to do is lock them in combat so they can't get any further, specifically towards his heroes, because he's in an advantageous position currently. He is 2-1 up, so he doesn't even need to... He just needs to maintain the status quo. He wins the game. Yeah. So really, he needs to now equivocate the game in the correct way and just maintain that. Now it's Donal's game, so the tempo. I think that's what it's called.
Yep.
The tempo is for Ben's Savva.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of what Donal hasn't really committed yet, we've not seen too much from his Boingrot Bounders. The Boingrot Bounders at their best on a charge, and if they're already committed into a combat here, it may mean that he's not going to be able to get a nice charge in later. We will see exactly what he wants to do, how many Bounders he can get into this fight now, just so they can kind of fight their way free almost to do.
Also, shutting down the Bounders' charge. It's on the charge they do the mortal wounds, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, they bash into you, do a few mortal wounds, and then actually start fighting.
Yeah. So I think again locking them in combat was a really smart move, and all done with the same charge.
Yeah.
So that big charge, which locked up the unit of Grots on the right, locked up the Bounders in the centre, which is decent. And that's kind of the tricky thing with Bounders, right? Because you can't control just how far they move.
Yeah, like, in terms of if you want to go big level, high level strategic...
I always want to.
Like, the problem,
I only like top down.
The problem with the Bounders is that planning out your turns gets that much more difficult because you have got this errant factor of, I don't know for sure how far they're going to move even if you go, right, well, I've got some cogs, maybe I've got a command ability to help me with movement, maybe I've got a formation that allows me to help with movement. They can be very mobile, but they're still not, they're not your 100% predictable. You know how far they're going to get, you know what you're going to get in with. And that's a really scary factor if you're trying to build a tournament list, because sometimes the dice just won't be in your favour, and they'll be stood just out of range to be able to get anything done.
Yeah. I think. Oh, do you move them first then? Is that what you do?
Well, no. In terms of for your regular movement, because it's a D6 or 2D6 movement, sometimes they just won't get as far as you really want them to.
Yeah.
Early doors, once they're getting in close, they're terrifying. It's just the initial getting them in position to be able to even try the charges that's the scary bit.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's really interesting. I've never had to use a random movement unit. I played against, by the way, Squigs for the past 3.5 years. Never enjoyed them because I'm either I am elated when they do roll terribly, but they just don't seem to, and they're just like, why are you so fast?
The good thing about the random factor of Squigs is that it makes it difficult for your opponent to plan.
Yeah.
So I love having the Mangler Squigs and a unit of Boingrot Bounders in my list because it's your opponent has to plan for it, even if it works out that they're not even going to do all the things they potentially could do. But on your side of things, yeah, sometimes it just won't pan out.
Yeah, I mean, that's, agreed. Information on the tabletop, 12 attacks have come from the Boingrots. They did 3 wounds, and that's it. And the mounts have hit twice, so they really haven't got the output. 2 wounds, like you said earlier on, 2 wounds on these models. You don't realise just... It's like every Seraphon player in the world watches this game and he goes, why am I Temple Guard not 2 wounds? They are just very sad.
Yeah, I mean, all of these Savage Orcs having 2 wounds is a really big deal. It makes it just a lot harder to... I mean, if you're talking about tar pit units, it's easy to look at a unit of 60 grots and be like, wow, that's a big old unit, it's going to take some killing. When you look at a unit of 30 Savage Orcs, same number of wounds sat on that table, it's just they're not occupying quite as much space.
And what's good about them is, Battle Shock is either not as big a deal, or it's a really big deal, right? Which I find quite advantageous as well. You have to deal with it less, but when you do have to deal with it, it's a really serious issue. But now what you're seeing... This is what happens. You're seeing all of the damage from the Loon Boss on Mangler Squig. We're seeing him in action. This is the first time I've seen him in action, by the way. And his D6 damage attack fails.
Always the way. Happens, statistically to me, 100% of the time, it seems to be that the big D6 damage attack, that's the one that just doesn't hit.
It hits on 4s or 3s?
3s, I think it is. But yeah, it just seems to work out. That's always the one. If you're going to get bad dice, that's where they come. And then, but conveniently...
I've never liked bad dice.
There are a lot of different attacks on the Mangler Squig. So even if the first set of attacks doesn't work, well, you've got the ball and chains, you've got your teeth, you've got your loon cutter for your boss. There's so many attacks going on there that sooner or later some of them will hit.
But much better on the charge, because you get to re-roll the attacks.
Correct, yes.
Yeah. So Mongoose, so what's going on? Is that what you're asking? It's hard to understand. There is currently you're in the combat phase for the Kunnin Rukk. There is a unit on the right-hand side engaged with the unit of Moonclan Grot Gitz, who are stabbers. You have a unit of Boingrot Bounders in the centre, engaged with another unit of Uruk Araboys. On the far left-hand side, you have a unit of Uruk. Just Uruks with
their chompers, yeah.
Engaged with a Loon Boss on a Mangler Squigs. That's currently the issue. Yeah.
And we're on places of power, so the blue poker chips, those are the ones controlled by Donal. So he's got one of the 3 objectives that he's been sat on for a turn. That's his 1 point. Ben picks up a couple of them with his characters last turn, and potentially, if things go right here, he's got 2 that he's going to be scoring on, which is going to make it kind of onus on Donal to get things going in the middle of this game.
Yeah, and following up with what Tristan Gray said in the chat there, the momentum is in Ben Savva's favour. So Ben's had 2 turns now, waiting for Donal to have his second turn. But because, as Tim quite rightly pointed out, those 2 objectives are in his control, that means that he's got the momentum, and Donal's got to pull it back. I mean, rolling double 6s for stuff is always very useful.
Yeah, I mean, it's... In terms of what characters Donal has to be able to nick those objectives back, a lot of his characters don't really want to be anywhere close to a fight. The Mangler Squig on the left-hand side with the Loon Boss, fantastic. It's exactly where it wants to be. Scragrot, he's got this... I mean, Scragrot, I guess, and the Fungoid Cave Shaman both have their 4-up in invulnerables to taking wounds, but they just don't want to be in the middle of a fight if they can help it anyway. They're more about the casting. In the case of Scragrot, he doesn't mind doing a bit of shooting. But here we have Donal starting to throw down some of his spells. He's been able to cast...
So Scuttle-Tide?
Yeah, well, no, he's got his Scuttle-Tide down. The fact he's rolling 6d6 means that he's figuring out the range on his mushroom, which means the mushroom must have gone off.
So this is massive. So yeah, into turn 3, the 2 things that are a really big deal now is the mushroom and the Scuttle-Tide. We talked about that in turn 1, both failed. Now Scuttle-Tide on bottom right hand corner, it just appears from any terrain piece, so that's near that shaman, and now you're going to see the mushroom. But I think what Ben's done really cleverly, knowing he's going into that turn, is he's moved lots of his units away. Like, he was all clumped up in the first turn, but now he's got far enough up the table that he now is not. So the mushroom is going to have so much less impact. I feel like there's a more elegant way to say that, but it's going to be less impactful, there we go, than what could have been in the previous turn.
Now, the thing that's still available to Donal if he gets the mushroom off is that he's going to be able to put it on one of the objectives that he doesn't control and just leave Ben in a position where he maybe isn't as excited about having a character sat right next to the mushroom.
Yeah.
Now, as things stand, Ben's already scored his points. He's ahead. It's the onus is very much on Donal to try and take them from him. It's just a matter of how he's going to do it.
Well, so on the right-hand side, you see Scuttletyde's already caused. I think I don't know if Ben counts up or counts down, but it potentially. Oh, and Scragrot has cast his spell.
Nick it.
And the shaman has died to it.
Boom.
D3 mortal wounds, and it does D3 mortal wounds, and it steals the item, right?
It does D3 mortal wounds, but then on top of that, if you roll high enough on it, then you get to destroy an item.
Yes.
You don't nick it. Like, weirdly, in spite of the name of the spell, you don't gain that item. You don't magically steal the item and get to use it for yourself. You just make it so it doesn't work anymore.
It's a bit like Donal as a player, really. The confidence of the spell really just shuts down your ability to use your skills.
Yeah. Somehow you managed to make undispellable Geminids just through sheer force of will.
However, the D3 mortal wounds is what kills the shaman, and that's the shaman in the centre where that pink dice was near the Geminids at the bottom centre. And oh, sorry, everyone at home. And with that, that means that centre objective now is not contested. It's just no longer.
No one's scoring
Ben's.
for Ben.
So now it's again. Evil, flat. Itchy nuisance is going down, which means a unit is going to be always strikes last.
So that makes it a little bit easier for the Loon Boss and Mangled Squigs on the left of our screen to. It can basically wait out until comparatively late on to do its activation. It doesn't need to be one of the early fights.
Yeah. So yeah, it's got. And what's is that the right decision? We haven't seen the mushroom go down though. We didn't see
maybe that one got counted.
We got all pumped about it for everybody, and then I'm so sorry, it's still on the far left-hand side there, so just out of shot. So it's
just chilling out in the ready to be played zone.
Yeah,
next to some dead fanatics.
The score now, yes, it's 2 more points. So he held on. So it is 6-1. That's how I read it. I'm just going to double check with the table, but it's definitely. You score it. I thought you only scored it every turn.
Is it at the end of the turn overall though?
No, it's your turn.
Well, we will presumptively put it at 6-1, and we'll see whether or not it's that's accurate.
Yeah,
because the longer you hold them for, the more.
Yeah, I was pretty certain. Yeah,
the more goodish they are.
Yeah, this has an FAQ ever since. So even though that character has died, he now no longer holds the objective. There was a very small amount of time where you also held the objective even if you were dead.
Yes,
which was a bad time. But
yeah, it's a messy bit of wording. I'm glad that we've been able to
use English.
Yeah, essentially.
I think those guys were using English too, but like it just didn't translate.
Oldie English,
yeah.
Where all the S's look a bit like F's.
Or near Pudding Mill.
Pudding Mill Lane, yeah.
Yeah, Pudding Mill Lane is where some of the older rules were written.
Yeah,
I think.
It does sound very Dickensian, doesn't it? Please, sir, can I have some more dice?
So yeah, we're just getting an update. The Boingrots are running away, so they're going to run and charge, right?
They can run and charge if they're under the moon. I'm not sure whether or not enough of them are in that quarter to be able to do that.
Okay, all right. We'll find out. I don't think. What, do you think then? Because the moon is in the centre now, no?
The moon's still in the top left. It's at
left.
Start of each activation, a big turn.
Yeah.
That it gets to move around. Otherwise, it'd be off the end of the board super fast most games.
If you guys want to see the lists, you can go on to you can go onto my Twitter. You can go onto the Honest Wargamer. I did a podcast where we did all of the lists available. But are we going to go look at them?
I mean, if you want, we can quickly flash up a list on screen. If you want a quick bushes, just while they're figuring out a couple of details here. So, where is it? It'll just appear in a second for you, hopefully.
Almost certain.
There we go. So there's Donal's list up there. So that's his Gloomspite Gitz list. The important bits there, 120 goblins. He's got 3 endless spells between Mork's Mighty Mushroom, Scuttletide and Geminids. Fanatics are already dead. 10 bounders, 6 snufflers, and then a whole bunch of casters between Madcap Shamans, Fungoid Shaman, and of course Scraggot himself.
And we've already seen that 60 stabber unit die.
Yep. Then they might come back with the shrine that he has going on.
Yeah, so
on the other side of things, Ben Savva, so he's classic cunning Rukk. He's also got, though, which is kind of an interesting one, the Bone Grinds Wall Clan, which means if one of his units dies on a 6, it might get to come back on the edge of the table. Haven't seen that come up yet, but it could be a big deal. And then, obviously, lots of Araboys. He's got some Savage Oryx there just to make up his battle line. A couple of weird knobs for redundancy, Savage Big Boss, and the Wurgog Prophet in there alongside his cogs. So those are our two armies that we see going on here. And then if we get back to the table here, we can see what's happening with regards to the various fights in the middle. You can see Scraggot, he's in the middle there. That base makes him super easy to pick out on this table. He is going for that middle objective. So this is how Donal's going to get back in this, by getting a few points on the board, contesting these objectives in our places of power here.
He only has to really... it's an attrition game, right? You only have to hold the objectives for as long as there are characters. It's a character trading scenario, and in this situation, the Loon Boss on the Mango Squig on the far left is definitely like in an advantageous position for being quite tough relative to everything else that's on the board. And unfortunately, Ben's the Uruks are not particularly well armoured. They're wearing it's not even a t-shirt save. It's a loincloth.
Loincloth and paint save. Meanwhile, Scragrot's a weird one when it comes to his survivability, as is the Fungoid Cave Shaving, because they're the ones that have got the 4-up against losing wounds.
Yes.
So, in the same way that Jack Armstrong, if he can keep rolling 4-ups, gets to deal essentially infinite damage with his spells, if Donal can keep rolling 4-ups, then his characters are going to be quite difficult to take off the table, but for the fact that there's approximately infinite shots being sent to them. Does infinite shots beat infinite saves?
Great question. We're going to find out.
We will, soon enough.
Although, I know Jack's army isn't particularly, save-orientated. I think Donal may still have this, if I'm honest, because I think in the attrition game, because we're only in turn 2, there's still 3 turns of scoring to happen. I just think that there's more opportunity for Donal in this situation.
Yeah, Ben's list is incredibly explosive. It can generate a gigantic advantage in the early turns. I don't know if I would really say that he's done that.
I was about to follow. Yeah, I agree. It's in the second turn. He's got rid of 1 unit of grots.
Yeah, so 360 points of grots taken off the battlefield. It's possible that they'll just re-emerge at half strength next to that Loon Shrine.
Yeah, but that doesn't really impact the game in any way, because it's all about the characters. But now with Scragrot being there in the centre, that's a big commitment, realistically. Here we go. There's a dice roll. Oh, Donal's rolled a 3. This is where here we go, priority roll now. This is big. Ben scores a 2. It's in scenery. I don't know if he's re-rolling it. So it's a 4 versus... It's gone to Gitz.
Gitz got him.
Oh, that's really big. We're going to get...
The moon is in the middle of the board, so the moon is doing as much as it can possibly do now. We are going to have... Donal taking... Looks like he's taking it. So let's just get our scores updated off that, because... things have moved around a little bit in the middle. So the moon. So the first thing that has to happen in between turns is the move. Now, what's key here, and might be really nice for Ben, is if Donal takes the turn, Geminids cannot hit his army. Finally, he might be in a place where the moon's the only thing he has to worry about, rather than these Geminids. So the moons will now mean that he's going to be able to pick a unit on the board to take D3 mortal wounds. Just one enemy unit, that'll just happen. So in this instance, maybe start trying to pick off some characters. So we need to get our scores well updated. Our scores are massively incorrect. So we're going to make sure that this is now accurate. It's currently 4-3.
There you go. So it's 4-3 currently to Ben. And then more than likely in this situation, as you can see, the 2 blue poker chips from our OSP system. No, wait. So
trademark
SOP,
pending.
SOP system. Yeah, trademark pending. So he holds the centre and the left-hand objective, and now he's brought back that unit of Gitz that died.
Yeah, I think that they could still prove pretty relevant here. They come back next to the Loon Shrine, but they're going to come back close enough. That Loon Shrine is in a pretty useful position considering which of the three objective markers Donal's trying to hold
secure,
up here.
yeah. So people asking, the Mangler did engage in combat, but he just fluffed everything.
Yeah.
Did not do the damage. So that unit of 10 is 20 wounds, that unit of 10 Rukk boys, but they held not hold the objective, but they got in the fight at least. But they're not going to do much. Now, Scragrot, he's going to try and do... Yeah, he's doing D3 mortal wounds to Scragrot from his own Geminids.
Oof.
From earlier. Ben has left. He has a weird knob on the right-hand side left. He has the big boss left. And he also has, on the far left-hand side, he has a Maniac Weird Boy on a ball. So basically there's 3 characters, one in the centre and then 2 on either side that are left and available for him to score objectives. So really, Donal's got to try and deal with them in a turn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Try and get them... I mean, essentially, as soon as you hit a point where your opponent's not got any characters left, it's feeding time. It's time to get some points and make sure, as long as you're ahead at that point, you can't then lose.
He's got to hold. And it's not much. It's going to be really swingy. So what will happen in this turn, Donal will go, because he's won the priority, right? So this is turn 3. So that you're watching, this is the beginning of turn 3. Donal's going to go 5-4 up. There's only a point in it. And he really has to make sure that Loon boss on Mangler Squig stays alive, because I think Scragrot will die to that fire from shooting.
Yeah, Scragrot it's going to be a tough ask for him to get through this turn of shooting.
But that's whether or not. So the Boingrot Bounders are free now to go and harass, and I'm sure they're going to be looking for the big boss. So the Geminids I don't know where the Geminids have actually gone, really. We'll find out. But yeah, the Boingrot Bounders could potentially go and threaten at least maybe the right-hand side Shaman. Donal dropping the Grots he forgot last turn because they're trying to rush the game. They've agreed he deploys them defensively, and Sav has moved the Geminids, and a Boingrot Bounder went down to the Geminids, and Geminids got moved back because Ben forgot to move the Skulltide. Okay, there you go. So a bit of one of my favourite phases of Warhammer, the retroactive phase.
These things sometimes, there's a lot to keep in mind, and certainly I know that when it comes to me playing Gitz, there's so many things happen every single phase. I've got a gigantic cheat sheet. It's almost so big
cheat book.
Yeah, pretty much. That you have. All right, what phase are we in? How many different things are there just in my army that I need to remember that just trigger at the start of each phase? So, like, have you remembered your Snufflers at the start of the movement? Nice. Have you remembered all your different bits? And, like, you're allowed to do this. It's part of the game. It just means that then you can focus on all the tactical stuff, and there's a lot of that too. So, both these players wisely trying to play as fast as they can because they recognise that both these armies have the potential to get a bit bogged down. And a couple of little bits and pieces just getting missed.
New book versus an old underused army. There's the thing. I assume you tattoo your cheat sheet onto your forearm because you're committed to Gitz forever, right?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, that's. I mean, if you did anything less, then I would think that you maybe weren't committed full time to Gitz.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that you got to have your true colours shining through.
Yeah, I have actually tattooed across my chest mortal wounds in addition on 6s, fireglaves, just there. So every time I have a shower in the morning, I look and I go, oh yeah, good, I remember.
Yeah, you memento that stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. We still haven't seen the mushroom cast, and probably the right decision is to not cast the mushroom. But
Itchy Nuisance going off though will be pretty relevant. It just again means that you've got a little bit of control over how the combat phase is going to go a little bit more easily.
It's useful. I think we saw it go off last time. I don't think it's a particularly big deal for securing the game. But it all helps, I guess, depending on what you want to cast.
The other one that I'm interested in, if we're going to see it going off at some point, is the Great Green Spite.
It failed to cast, I think. Green Spite failed.
It's unfortunate because it's one of the rare instances of just a lot of mortal wounds on a single spell. So yeah, you pick one of your units that's close by to you, one of your opponent's units. If you've got a big unit nearby, you just get to throw out a whole bunch of mortal wounds. You get up to D6 mortal wounds potentially off that one, and it's like in the big long list of quote unquote must stop spells. that are coming from Gloomspite Gitz, it's yet another one. So you can reasonably go, yes, all right, if you stop my Hand of Gork, then I've still got this. If you stop my Mushroom, I've still got that. You can just throw a lot of important spells. Like, the amount of times that you're having to just do some Mystic Shielding is pretty low.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah, Mystic Shield is rarely used nowadays, unless you have something that's 3-up save and potentially is ethereal. However, there's one other game of these top 4 tables left over on table 3, and we have heard that Nurgle finally, it's been a tense 3 turns, but in the 4th turn finally Nurgle have taken all 3 objectives.
Yep, that's how you do it. It doesn't matter if you don't score early as long as you score late, and it looks, by the sounds of it, Matt's found a way of doing that.
That's my dating philosophy, actually.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It's points on the board. It doesn't matter when you get them.
That's it. That's what I think.
That's why, whenever I'm at a family wedding, my mum's like, "So, how's it going?" And I'm like, "It doesn't matter, Mum.
Points on the board at some point."
Yeah.
So we have found that Scragrot has got, talking about Mystic Shield, it's gone off on Scragrot.
And in this instance, I can actually see where the value in that lies, because you're going, he's got such a clear target on his head. He's so obviously going to be in danger that, yeah, you might as well keep him safe.
Yeah. And it's the key to victory. Everything should be done to protect Scragrot in this instance. So I think that's, and also there's, is that a single Madcap Shaman on the right hand side that we've seen? The Fungoid Cave Shaman.
That's the Fungoid Cave Shaman on the right.
Hilariously womping forward and ready to fight at a moment's notice.
I mean, he's got the little squig bonus when it comes to fighting, so while I would struggle to say that he's good in a fight.
I think he's trying to get that objective. There you go.
Yeah, do it.
He's contesting it at least.
He's contesting it, and also he's another one of these pieces that has the 4-up on losing wounds.
Yeah.
He's got less wounds to play with to begin with, so that's
a DPR, a damage prevention roll.
There we go.
Because there's multiple versions of it. Obviously, there's Disgusting Resilience, or in this case, I think it's a squig.
Yes.
But we just use the term DPR. It's quick and easy, and then everyone has it. It's a roll you do after your armor save, but after damage has been multiplied out.
Yeah.
Real easy. Armor save, multiply the damage if it's a D6 or something else. You find out what your damage is, then you roll that many for a DPR save. Damage prevention roll.
Love it.
Took us like 4 days to come up with that.
Lots of good terms and conditions apply when it comes to taking damage in this game.
The T's and C's of damage.
Yes,
that's better. Why didn't we have you previously? You could have helped us with this.
Could have been doing it all, but alas, I was
busy running Magic Madhouse.
Busy running a game
really
shop
busy
and bar.
Now. There's loads of people playing.
Yeah, turns out, come the weekend, there's all sorts of games going on. So we've got
Magic.
We've got some board games. There's some Dungeons and Dragons over there.
There's a cute dog.
There is a cute dog. I went and said hello to the cute dog between rounds.
Same. Snap.
Yeah.
Good work. Made sure we told him he was a
Remus
good boy.
the dog.
Yeah. He's a good dog, Brent.
He's a good boy.
Yeah. Right. So we get back to the game. We got too excited there. So Donal is intending to shoot into the hero on the right hand side with the boat with the moon on the stick.
The moon on a stick.
That moon on the stick. And that could basically win the game, the moon on the stick.
Yeah, the moon on a stick. I mean, there's not very much shooting in Donal's list. It turns out that if you want to be destruction shooting, maybe the Cunning Ruck's better plan in total. But specifically Scragrot, almost unnecessarily, I would say, considering that he does good things in the hero phase with all of his magic and so on, and he has control over the moon itself in order to just make everything a little bit better and quicker and easier. He's also got really quite a potent shooting attack.
He does.
I mean, it both gets to... Oh, sorry. We need to update our score. It was 6 at the bottom, so it's 6-3. Let me just update that. But yeah, he gets to deal damage with his moon on stick. Oh, there we go. And once you've tagged something with a bit of damage from the moon on a stick, that damage... That's extra mortal wounds that you just deal from then on out.
Yeah.
So you gradually kill things. Now,
is it every hero or every one of your hero phases, or it's at the beginning of every battle round?
We can double check. We've got the book right here. Might as well make sure that we're accurately reporting these things. Let's have a little look. So yeah, at the end of each battle round, and that's even if the wounds inflicted by Moon on Stick have been subsequently healed.
Yes.
You cannot heal from
at
the aftermath.
End of each battle round.
At the end of each battle round.
That's actually massively Well, okay. So, and interestingly, we've had info from the tabletop. Because of the situation and because of time, Donal has decided to concede due to time. And it looks like, well, Ben will be up at the end of turn 3. So the battle round has ended in turn 3 because of the pack that Donal wrote himself, which I think is which is pretty cool. He has decided to concede because obviously he knows that a round has to be finished. It's a bit
Yeah,
right?
it's a little bit tricky. I mean, it's one of those things that fitting in games in time is a big call on it. And this is not him saying I'm only conceding because time is a factor. It's him saying I'm far enough behind that catching up the number of points I would need to catch up is unrealistic given the amount of time that's left going on.
Yeah, I think based on the priority roll, which I assume they did before he conceded.
I would guess so. Yeah.
That would mean that I think Donal knows that the lane was lost. I'm sorry that we haven't bring you the culmination of that game. Everyone watching at home, should everyone watch the screen because this is super cool. Sheep.
just incredibly briefly, we get our silly wipes.
You're amazing, Tim. I really enjoyed today. Thank you so much for this.
It's been fun. But yeah, we got our second game in. So to give you an idea of the overall shape of where things are. So this is the London Masters 2019. 8 players enter the room. One of them emerges a master. One of them gets one of these and a lovely shield.
Yeah.
And hammer and shield. That seems quite appropriate. I like that.
They get a hammer and shield?
Well, the shield they don't get to take home. This they get to take home, but they get their name on the shield.
Oh, no, I mean, you intended the hammer and shield, right? Yeah.
But yes, so what we have here is we got 2 players that are going to be contesting for that final now, and we know who those players are because they're the ones that have won their first round and their second round. That's who we're going to get on camera for the final.
So it will be Mr. Ben Savva versus Mr. Jack Armstrong.
A lot of shooting in this final.
It is a shooting game, that's right. Shooting versus shooting, right?
There's been a lot of talk about whether or not shooting will be coming back to AOS in a big way, and now's the time.
Yeah. Tim, you've been doing a fantastic job today.
We've been having a lot of fun.
I've really enjoyed this. Thank you very much. I hope you guys back there have enjoyed it. Don't forget to join us for the final. Who will become the Master of all London? They gain a key to the city, a pork pie, and also the immunity from all banking charges.
They're allowed to drive sheep across all the bridges in London. They become an official yeoman of London, I think is the term.
Yeah, and special access to Hogwarts.
Yes, all of that. Platform 9 3/4, an open door at this point. But yeah, so we will find out who that ultimate victor will be soon enough. Don't go anywhere. Go a little way. You can have a cup of tea. Just don't, go out.
Yeah.
Seem like a deal? All right, we'll see you soon.
See you soon. Thank you.